Today, we're diving into one of the most significant social movements of our time, Black Lives Matter. We're going to break down where it came from, what its goals are, and the controversies it has stirred up, all based on what the sources tell us. Let's get right into it. So let's start with the big question. What is Black Lives Matter? You've seen the name everywhere, right? But the answer has a lot of layers. It started as a simple hashtag, but as we're about to see, it blossomed into this complex global movement with some really deep historical roots. Here's how we're going to tackle this. We'll start at the very beginning, the movement's origin and the history behind it. Then we'll look at how it grew into a global uprising, spell out its core goals, take an honest look at the criticisms, and then finally explore its lasting impact. You know, every major movement has that one moment, that spark that lights the fuse. For Black Lives Matter, that moment was born from a single court verdict that many people saw as a profound injustice. First off, let's talk about the name itself. Black Lives Matter is a pretty direct statement, isn't it? It's a phrase that was created to push back against a painful idea, that in society, Black lives are often treated as if they are worth less. It's really a call to action to face systemic racism head-on. And that specific spark, it came in 2013. George Zimmerman was acquitted in the shooting death of Trayvon Martin, an unarmed teenager. That verdict just sent these huge shockwaves across the country, and it led directly to the creation of the hashtag Black Lives Matter. That phrase, well, it quickly became the rallying cry for a whole new movement. But of course, a movement like this doesn't just spring up out of nowhere. It's actually tapping into a long history of activism in America, even as it carves out its own very unique path. It's really interesting when you compare BLM to the civil rights movement from the 50s and 60s. You see some major differences. The civil rights movement had these very clear, centralized leaders, right? Think Martin Luther King Jr. BLM, on the other hand, is built to be decentralized. It also focuses on what's called intersectionality, which is just the idea that different kinds of discrimination can overlap and compound each other. And the biggest difference, of course, is technology. BLM was born and raised on social media, using it to organize and spread its message like wildfire around the globe. So, how exactly did a hashtag on the internet transform into a genuine global uprising? Well, the movement's explosive growth was really fueled by a series of high-profile cases that brought millions of people out into the streets. So after that 2013 spark, things really started to accelerate. In 2014, the death of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, took the protests from online to on the ground in a huge way. Then, that same year, the death of Eric Garner in New York City just added more fuel to the fire. And then came 2020. The murder of George Floyd. It triggered this absolutely unprecedented global wave of demonstrations that made the movement completely impossible to ignore. Okay, this brings us to a really crucial question. Beyond the signs and the marching, what are the movement's specific goals? What changes are people actually fighting for? When you look at the objectives, you see they're pretty broad, and they're all connected. We're talking about everything from ending police brutality and reforming the entire criminal justice system to fighting for economic justice and boosting Black political power. The big overarching goal that ties it all together is achieving deep systemic change. And while those goals cover a lot of ground, if you had to point to one thing, the absolute heart of the movement has always been to stop police brutality and make sure law enforcement is held accountable. It all comes back to the very events that ignited the movement in the first place. Now, of course, any movement this big and this impactful is going to have its share of controversy. So to really get the full picture, we have to spend some time looking at the criticisms and concerns that have been part of the conversation. Critics tend to raise several key points. Some will point to instances of rioting or property damage that have happened alongside protests. Others feel the language used can be divisive. The call to defund the police became especially controversial, with opponents worrying that it would threaten public safety. And you'll also hear concerns about that decentralized structure we talked about, and its alleged ideological leanings. But it's absolutely crucial to see the other side of this. Supporters of the movement push back hard on these criticisms. For them, Black Lives Matter is an essential and necessary response to centuries of systemic racism, and they argue the focus really needs to be on fixing those root problems. So, no matter where you stand in the debate, one thing is just not up for argument. The movement has had a massive, lasting impact. So, What does its legacy look like so far?
The impact has been truly profound. I mean, it's dragged issues like police brutality and criminal justice reform into the global spotlight. It's gotten millions of people off their couches and into the streets to demand change. But maybe its biggest legacy is that it has fundamentally changed how we talk about race, not just in the US, but everywhere. It's inspired countless other forms of activism all over the world.
At the end of the day, Black Lives Matter is a major force in the long, ongoing struggle for racial justice. It's a chapter of history that's still being written, but its importance to our time is already crystal clear. So, there's no doubt the conversation has shifted. But the hard work of building a more just and equitable society, well, that's far from over. And that leaves us with the big, lingering question we all have to think about. What comes next?